conversation. I call it a conversation because you can't really talk about mental health in 1 hour and finish everything. So hopefully we're just planting seeds, and you'll continue to have these conversations in your community, in your church, in your homes. This should be something that we start to have conversations about, to just start talking about it. That picture there is on purpose, that I've put behind there. It's painted by a very good friend of mine, former client. She's called Katie, and she has her own mental health problems that she's walking through. But she's a great artist, and she painted this. And what we see from it is masks. We often wear a lot of masks emotionally. We hide our emotions. And sometimes those masks can kill us if we don't start talking about the issues that are bothering us. So this is what it is. It's just conversation, stimulating conversation. If at any time, you have a question, please stop me, just unmute and talk. Yeah, and then we'll see as we go from there. I don't know if someone is also managing the lobby, just making sure that people who are joining are admitted. If you can just take care of that, because I can't actually see it anymore. But yeah, so conversations. So I will start with a question, because this is interactive. We don't want to fall asleep. We woke up very early. And I want us to be engaged with the content that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to ask a question about, what is mental health to you? When you heard of the psychiatrist coming to talk to you, what were your first honest thoughts about that? And what are your sort of thoughts coming into this conversation about what mental health is? Because we're already coming with some information. So anybody to just just give us your thoughts. What is mental health? Psychiatry, behavioral medicine? What is all of this? What is mental health? Anyone?
Okay. Just to break the ice. Hi guys. Hi ladies. Okay, so I was actually invited by a friend of mine to join. I'm joining online. So for me, mental health, just to put it in simple terms, actually there are two. For me, it comes into can I say dimensions, because I'm also a believer, right? So there's the church part of it, because I see this is a FM Midrand. I'm actually a member of Forward in Faith Midrand, so it's very interesting. So for me, already coming through from that perspective of church and belief system, it's like an attack. It's a very spiritual attack. Like we call it in our church, it's a spirit of oppression, right? So that's the one side. Then for me, on the other side, which is the actual the one that you are coming in, Dr. Chido, I really enjoyed listening to your profile being read. I'm like someone who sits on a board from WHO. This is now more than interesting, because and you're a psychiatrist?
Psychiatrist.
These words, yeah. But for me personally, because I went through depression in 2021. And I actually visited one psychiatrist in South, because I'm in Midrand, I was in Midrand. I went to a psychiatrist in Pretoria, and I was attended. That's where it was diagnosed to say I've got depression. And remember, I'm a Christian. I'm like, what? Depression? And even my family, they didn't understand what is depression at that point. Right now, they're trying now to even research about it, because it happened straight to me. For me, this is very personal, and I was actually on medication for about 6 months. So for me, this is big. But yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, my sister. What's your name? Sorry, because I can't see the guest list.
Oh, I don't know why is it my phone that is the volume is a bit low. I thought this is like what is it? Is it anonymous or something? So I just put initials. It's
Oh,
PC,
no.
which
Okay, no problem. I'll call you PC. No problem. So our
yes,
sister
yes.
PC
So
has
PC, that's my name for tonight, for today.
for today.
Yeah, we can.
Thank you, PC, and thank you so much for sharing, because I think you've just hit the nail on the head. Conversations about mental health in church can be very difficult because there are many ideas, there are many thoughts about where it comes from, about why people have mental health challenges, and sometimes there's a lot of stigma as well that's attached to that. So I am very glad that you opened the floor by saying that this can happen to Christians. We'll look at some stories in the Bible as well. There's one particular story that I want to share where we will see that it even happens in the Bible too. So these issues are not new, but I think talking about them is a bit new. And I'm so glad that we've got a mixed audience as well. Thank you for coming from Forward in Faith. I think that's important that we also start those conversations in our different congregations. But I think you've really hit the nail on the head, and I hope as we go along, if people please feel free to share if there's something that you feel will also help others, because many times people don't talk because they feel like they'll be judged, or they'll feel like I'm the only one who is going through this sort of a situation. But already our sister PC has started us off by saying that these things can happen, and also that you can get better. That's also another aspect to it. So how are we going to structure this? There are a couple of areas that I would want us to touch on in the next hour. But it's interactive, like I said. Please stop me if you need to ask a question or you've got a comment. I think it's important that we make it a conversation, a discussion. So we'll start with what is mental health. There is a definition of it, but I also look at it from the Christian end as well. And then factors that affect mental well-being. And I'm going to touch on factors that affect us as women. This is a ladies' meeting. But I also have put in a bit of a few notes about factors that affect men as well. Because a lot of us have got men in our lives, whether they are our spouses or they are our children or they are fathers. It is also important that we highlight there. Because many times when women know, when women understand these issues, they are better taken care of in the families, because that's part of our role as women. We take care of others, and it's good that we understand and we can identify problems early. Then we'll talk about why we should be worried about mental health problems. Yeah. Then we'll go into a little bit about the common mental health problems. I'm not going to talk about all of them. It's a whole subspecialty of medicine, but I'll highlight some of the really common stuff that happens all the time. Then we'll also talk about how mental health problems are managed, and also how we can maintain our mental well-being. And lastly, we'll talk about safeguarding each other. I love that your group is called Impact Ladies, and for us to be able to make an impact, we need to be able to also see how we can help others. So hopefully we'll discuss, we'll learn a lot as we go through the meeting today, and at the end of it, hopefully we'll be better off. We'll have a better understanding about mental health issues and be able to maintain our mental well-being and that of our families better. So by definition, and this is the WHO definition, mental health is a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own full potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a meaningful contribution to his or her community. And this can be the family, it can be the wider community. So already, if you just look at that definition, you can already judge yourself whether you are mentally healthy or not. So we're talking about reaching potential. We are all born with an inborn potential. God made us with a purpose in mind, and he had a potential that he put into us when he created us. Each and every one of us is unique in how we were made by God, and we've got a purpose that we were created for. And are we reaching that potential? Or are we living, sub-minimum, where we are not really at our full potential, but we're somewhere, we're just sort of coasting along, but we're not seeing your full potential. That potential is important for you to feel fulfilled, but it's also important for us as the community, because when you don't feel your full potential, we miss out. We miss out. And then you're coping with life. Life is full of stress. We'll talk a little bit about stress. Stress is not all bad, but coping with those normal stresses of life, and then being able to work. Work is part of life, part of human life. I think it's a gift from God, really, to be able to work, whether you're working in the home, whether you're working outside of the home, but to be able to be productive, to be able to be fruitful in what you're doing, and then to be able to contribute to others as well, to be able to impact the life of others. So this is what we mean when we talk about mental health. It's not about mental illness, it's about mental health. Then I want to go into something from a believer standpoint, because I am a believer in Christ. I believe many of us here are. Those who aren't, hopefully, will be able to facilitate so that you understand more about being a believer in Christ and the fulfillment that can come from that, because we cannot reach our full potential if we are not connected with God, and we are not fulfilled within our souls. And it's important that we also put this in context, mental health in the context of our beliefs. And mental health is really about the wellness of the soul. We are body, soul, and spirit. Body, soul, and spirit. And health, physical health issues are to do with the wellness of the body, this flesh, the wellness of the flesh. That's physical wellness and physical health. Then spiritual health is what our pastors take care of. Our spirits are born or revived when we are born again. Before we are born again, our spirits are dormant, and then when we are born again, they become alive. And through the walk of being a believer and working out our salvation with fear and trembling, we become more alive and become well in our spirits. And there are disorders that can affect the spirit, like our sister PC says. But then there are issues to do with the soul. So the soul is the mind, our will or our behavior, and our emotions. So our mind, our thinking, our thoughts. Our will is our decision making, how we behave, and then our emotions. And God also wants us to prosper in our souls. 3 John 1 verse 2 says, "Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, even as your soul prospers." So God desires that we prosper in our souls and be in health in our souls as well. So this is partly what we are then going to talk about, because mental health touches mostly in the realm of the soul. And when we are mentally healthy, we are well in our souls, in our minds, in our will, in our emotions. We're at peace. We're at peace with others. We're in our relationships. We're at peace with ourselves. We're at peace with God. So I'm going to throw a question to you. It's a reflective one that you can take home with you. Is your soul prospering? So you may not have a mental illness that we can diagnose with our, the means that we use to diagnose, but your soul may not be prospering. There might be something there where your soul is not really prospering and you're not reaching that full potential that we talked about. And then I come to the spectrum, because sometimes people think that when we say mental ill, when people are mental ill, we're talking about people who are in crisis, who have got disorders, which are diagnosable. But many times, by the time you have a diagnosable disorder, a lot has happened. So you don't just wake up in crisis. There's a slow deterioration most of the time. Sometimes it's quick, depending on some of the conditions that are there. But many times it's slow. We want to be living here where we are excelling. That's where we want to be. This is when we're prospering in our souls. This is when we are living to our full potential. We're cheerful, we're joyful, we've got energy, we are performing, we are able to work productively. We are realizing our full potential. That's excelling. That's where we want to be. Sometimes a few challenges can push us to thriving, but we're still okay. We're positive. We're dealing with those challenges well. We're functioning normally, even though we are challenged. So we are still thriving. Then if we continue to deteriorate, or if we don't really do anything about this situation and we continue to deteriorate, we then come to a point of surviving. Ooh, this is where the problems start. But I wish as a clinician, I would see people at this stage, because most of them, when you're surviving, you don't really have a diagnosable illness, but you need to talk about issues. You need to figure issues out. we are now becoming worried. We're becoming nervous. We may be a little bit irritable. We might be a bit sad. We might be having a bit of trouble sleeping. Those challenges of life are now sort of coming and they are affecting us. And if we continue to struggle, we go into a struggling mode, and then eventually the crisis happens. So my encouragement with this slide is to see that things don't happen instantly, and also it's better to deal with issues earlier than later. Many times we say, it's not that bad. I'm feeling a bit low, but it's not that bad. I'm feeling a bit anxious, but it's not that bad. When it's not that bad, that's when you actually need to reach out, get some help, talk to someone, figure it out. Yeah, very important that we look at it like this. And then, of course, like I'll reiterate about the soul prospering. Is your soul prospering? You don't want to be in survival mode for your whole life. You want to be able to excel. You want to be able to live in that full potential that God gave you. And we need to also benefit from the full potential of who you are and who you were meant to be. So what are the factors that affect mental health? Hello, someone, do we need any, I can hear someone talk. Is that a question or a comment? Any comment? Okay, all right. So I'll continue. Some of the factors that affect our mental well-being, it's a myriad of factors because we're complex beings as humans. There's the biology of us, the physical health, and then there's the psychology, it's our minds, and then there's the environment that we stay in. You cannot really consider most of these issues outside of the environment, the social environment that we stay in as well. So biologically, there are issues that can affect our mental health. And this can be, I'll start with genetics. Genetics can affect our mental health. There are many conditions that are genetic in nature. And something like depression, we attribute almost 60% to genetics. That means there is a 40% where there's no genetics. There are other issues that are actually causing the depression. But many times there is a genetic picture. As Africans, sometimes we don't always know that there's a genetic predisposition because people don't always talk about these issues. A lot of my clients, when they first come in, you ask them, has anyone ever had a mental health problem in your family? They'll say no, the first visit. After 3, 4, 5 visits, that's when the story starts to come out. Oh, Uncle XY had an issue and Auntie XY had an issue. And then as we start to trust each other, the stories start to come out. And maybe they actually go and they ask their moms, they ask their aunties, and then that's where they start to hear, oh, okay, there was an issue. And there's a genetic vulnerability. It's not all of us, but some of us have got that genetic vulnerability. Anxiety as well, I think about 50% of people, there is a genetic vulnerability. So there's the genetics. Then there is neurochemical changes that can happen. Sometimes after you are physically unwell, you find yourself feeling low. That's because there is an upset of your neurochemistry that would have occurred because of the actual physical health problem that you would have had. I don't know if you've been hearing about a condition called long COVID. We've been seeing patients who just don't seem to get better after COVID. They take a long time, even a year or more, feeling unwell. And part of it is because of that imbalance that would have started to happen because of that original problem that they would have had. Issues about physical health. If you're physically unwell, there are some conditions like thyroid disorder that can actually affect your mental health as well. There are conditions after we give birth, postpartum. You can have postpartum mental health problems. I'll talk about them a little bit later in detail. So these are some of these physical issues that can actually start to affect our minds, our mental health. Then psychologically, our attitudes, our outlook on life, our perspective on life, our self-talk, how we talk to ourselves, has a great bearing on our mental well-being. How we cope with stress, how we've learned to cope with stress, the skill sets that we've built over time. And even maybe the way we were brought up to, how we were seeing people deal with some of these stresses. Then there's the social environment as well. We cannot talk about mental health outside of, the social economic issues. If you don't know where your next meal is coming from, it's going to be very hard to be mentally healthy. You're going to struggle. So these are issues that we need to be aware of and be conscious of, that they affect our mental well-being. High on the list as well is relationships. So these are our intimate relationships, our marriages, also the family circumstances, our families, the relationships in our families. All of those can affect our mental well-being. If you are not at peace with your sibling, let's say, or with your in-laws, it's not going to be very easy for you to be in full mental health and to be reaching your potential. So that's the interconnectedness of our biology, our psychology, and our social environment factors, how they interplay with our mental well-being. I want to focus a little bit on women's mental health. I think this, because it's a ladies' meeting, I'll start with the women. There are things that particularly affect women. And I put them in 3 groups, and this list is not exhaustive. There are many that are there, but I'll highlight just a few. And I'll start with social cultural expectations. So there's a lot of roles that women play in the family, in the community, and a lot of women are juggling multiple roles. I'll talk a little bit later when we talk about stress, about lots of responsibilities and how sometimes that can lead to stress. And a lot of our roles are complex and they're gender-based, you know. A lot of us have a lot of relationships that we need to manage, and that can affect our mental well-being. And we've also lost the traditional support structures that used to be there. Our families have become more nuclear. You know, I for the last 2 years I was staying, I was at home in Zimbabwe with my mom and dad. And I was staying with them, and there was a lot of support. There was a lot of support. There were issues that were happening, but there was a lot of support. You know, I had a baby at the time, and there was a lot of support. And my husband was working away, but you know, I had a lot of support, and I felt it. Then, you know, we moved back to where my husband is in Namibia, and it's now just us. It's not just us. I really miss that support where my mom would be like, you are busy. Let me do the school run for you. Oh, yeah, okay, let me help you with that. You know, another cousin of mine would come and say, oh, I'll do that for you. And that those sort of traditional support structures for most of us have been lost. And we don't have as much support. That means we have to rebuild different support networks now. Yeah, so very important. And children used to be raised in villages for a reason, because it's very difficult to raise a child, just the 2 of you. Or maybe just if you're a single parent, just one parent in the home. Very, very difficult. And that can make it difficult for women to maintain mental well-being. Then social cultural issues, status rather. A lot of women have got decreased access to education. I know it might seem like a thing of the past, but it's still very real. And a lot of women have lower paid work, even for the same work that men are doing. There's lower social status, a lack of autonomy, a lack of self-determination. You can't just decide, no, I want to do this, because you may not have the means to be able to do what you want. If you are in a difficult situation, it's very difficult for you to move out of it if you don't have sort of the ability to do so. And there's also the burden of what we call unpaid work. So a lot of women take on the unpaid work of life. The caring for children, the caring for the elderly, the caring for the sick, excuse me, the household work. This is the unpaid work of life. No one ever really quantifies, you know, how much it's worth, but it's worth a lot, and it's a lot of pressure sometimes. And women don't always realize the pressure that it's actually taking on their life as well. And a lot of women who work outside of the home may have found themselves in a situation now where you are told, oh, you can be whatever you want to be. But the actual traditional roles at home will not change. So you've got your work that you're doing outside of home and the traditional roles that you are played by a woman who doesn't work outside of the home. You still have to do those as well. So that actually puts a lot of pressure on women. And then physical and emotional vulnerability to abuse. A lot of women are exposed to domestic abuse, domestic violence. It's not always physical violence. Sometimes it's emotional, it's financial abuse as well. But of course, there's the sexual violence as well. Women are vulnerable to sexual violence, and it has a lot of psychological consequences on women's lives. We'll talk a little bit about PTSD as we go. I'll touch on men because sometimes after talking about women, you wonder, so are the men okay? But they're not. I've had to really open up my mind. Initially, my practice was very female. A lot of women come for help. More women come for mental health assistance than men. So I used to think maybe the men are fine. But what I started to realize of late, as men are starting to open up, is that that's not exactly true. And there's a lot of unhealthy social expectations. I'm talking about this so that you as women put it into context as well for the men in your lives. You've got men in your lives, men who are your fathers, who are your husbands, who are your brothers, and it's important, colleagues as well, church members as well, who are men and who may also be struggling with these issues. So there's an unhealthy social expectation sometimes on men about masculinity. We actually talk about it as toxic masculinity, where men are told, do not cry, do not expose emotion, you have to man up, you are the one who has to solve the problem, and it puts a lot of unhealthy expectation. Then there's an unhealthy personal expectation in a lot of men, the fear of being thought as weak or as being a failure, of being out of control, of being a burden. And an extreme expectation of self-reliance. A lot of men says, I'm the solution, I have to solve the problem. When in fact, when we are living, we should be in relation and get help from others. We all need that assistance. Then a poor understanding of men's symptoms by health workers. So a lot of health workers may not actually know, or may be biased to say if a man comes in and he's got certain symptoms, they won't put it together as a mental health problem. So women are actually statistically more likely to be screened for mental health problems than men. Because when men come in, maybe they'll have, a low mood or low energy, they're feeling sad. If it is a woman who has those symptoms, people put it together pretty quickly and say, maybe she's a bit low, maybe she's depressed, maybe she's anxious, let me ask her. But with men, that's really what is asked. Men are asked all sorts of other questions, and health workers actually miss the diagnosis. Then limited social support systems. Sometimes men do have these friendships, but they're not very deep, and they're not very they're not there to support them during times of need. And then a lack of self-awareness as well, and poor health-seeking behavior. A lot of men will drink their troubles away or use intimidation and violence. Violence is actually sometimes a symptom of mental health problems. Shame, and men sometimes get shamed or emasculated when they do say, I've got a problem, I've got an emotional problem. And then the community emasculates them. So this then creates a lot of problems. So that's an extra there for the ladies about men's mental well-being. Maybe the men will invite me next time and we'll talk about this more. So why should we be worried about mental health problems? There's a number of reasons. Mental health is becoming a significant problem in terms of disease burden. Mental health may not kill a lot of people. The one thing that does kill people is suicide, but a lot of others issues in mental health affect our quality of life rather than the quantity of the life. But it is a significant problem now, and for the things that do not kill. So the diagram there is showing diseases that do not kill. Mental health is taking a fair chunk of that, 31% of non-fatal disease burden. And mental health problems have been on the increase over time. So I'm going to stop and ask a question here. There's a statistic that's there now. It's a fact that depression has increased by over 50% over the last 30 years. I'm going to ask a question. Why? Why do we think depression has increased so much over the last 30 years? What are your thoughts, ladies? Any thoughts, any ideas? Why?
Good morning.
Yes, please go ahead.
Morning.
Good morning. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Sis Portia. I think the main issue right now is because people think for some odd reason if you go for counseling or if you talk to somebody, then you're exposing your issues. Remember when growing up, especially those who are married, growing up, we're told you don't talk about your marital issues, you don't talk about your family issues, you keep it to yourself. So I feel like that being at the back of our minds as we grow up, we feel like, oh gosh, if I talk to somebody, then I'm exposing my family issues, So you don't wanna talk to anyone. You wanna keep it to yourself. You just wanna pray alone. Meanwhile, sometimes talking to someone can help you without fighting alone. Even asking a sister to pray with, that's something you can actually opt for. So I think we would try to do everything on our own because we don't want people to know what we're going through, and as a result, we end up being depressed, being stressed, and next thing you don't know, somebody's gone by mere depression, which it could have been resolved or taken care of while it got any, or before it got any worse.
Thank you, Portia. That's so true. That idea that you should not talk about issues, don't hang your dirty linen in public, that's what they say, is very detrimental. We'll talk a little bit about social support and how relationships are so important to mental well-being. But yeah, thank you for that. It's very important that we talk. We need to be able to remove those masks, not with everybody. It's not everybody who has to know your issues, but there should be a few trusted people in your life who know everything, and they're able to assist. Any other comments on this? Why is depression on the increase? Why do we think? The team on the ground in Midrand, any questions there? Because I can't see you guys.
Hello.
Or yes, please go ahead.
I think the economic situation and the social situations are the major causes of depression. If things are not well at home, if you are not financially sound, if just the environment, and you listen to the TV, it's all about violence, lack of security, we just feel that one, it's not safe, whether you are in the mall, whether you are at home, and these cause depression. And also just the relationships, at home does cause depression. And at times you don't have the means to even help the family members, but there are expectations that you have to help whilst you yourself cannot cope. But also when it comes to work situation where, there's overload of work, or you are expected to perform more than what you can. And also the fact that you may just feel insecure at work, or you are bullied, but you still have to put on a good front. When it comes to church, we all come to church and it looks like all is well. And your husband may also be, a deacon, a pastor, or an elder. He performs so well at church, but you know that at home, he's not what he is at church. So these are some of the things. And as women, you have to bottle some of these things up. So it does cause, that depression and many other factors.
Thank you so much. I think you've hit on a lot of points there. The socioeconomic issues, very true. Things have become harder. I think there was a recent study that looked at depression and anxiety rates since COVID. And I think they found a 25% increase in just the last 2 years globally of depression and anxiety because of the stress that came with COVID. It wasn't so much yes, it was, of course, the disease itself and the issues that happened, but after COVID, the economic problems that came, and a lot of livelihoods that were destroyed, and there was a lot of challenges now coming forward from there. So the socioeconomic issues, we cannot divorce them from this. It's definitely a factor. I think there's a lot of work that was done in Western Cape, in Cape Town, where they were looking at the link between poverty and mental health, and there's this very vicious cycle. So if I don't have enough, if I'm in extreme poverty, what will happen is that my mood will not be great. I'll get depressed because of the situation I'm in, especially if I feel helpless. And then because I'm depressed, I cannot then go and work and perform to my full potential. And then I still can't earn enough money to get myself out of this situation. So it becomes a vicious cycle with poverty. So that's a very big factor. And then you talked about relationships. Very true. Relationships are a big issue. Our relationships have changed over time. There's a lot of pressure on marriages now. There's a lot of pressure on families over time. And that has also become an issue. But I'll also highlight here, because there's a debate to say, is it that depression is increasing, or is it that we're becoming more aware of it? But I think it's a little of both. I think generally it actually is increasing, but also that we are becoming more aware of it. Maybe 20 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, our grandmothers didn't have words for some of the things that they would be feeling. They would feel it, but they didn't have words for it, and there was maybe no space to talk about it in that fashion. And that maybe we are becoming more aware of it, and we're putting a name to it, and we're able to actually deal with it a little bit better. But yeah, so those are some of the factors that are there. A few facts about mental health problems. So 10% of adults are affected by either a mental health problem, a neurological problem, or a substance use issue. And also 1 in 5 children is affected. And then depression is now one of the leading causes of disability worldwide. So you would think disability is about physical, hey, it's about walking and moving around, but disability is also about not being able to function, not being able to get out of bed and do what I need to do. That's actually disability in and of itself as well. So depression is one of those leading causes of disability. Suicide, which is very closely linked to depression, is now taking a life every 40 seconds around the world. And it's the second leading cause of death among young people, aged 15 to 29. And suicide is a preventable death. Every time it happens, it's actually a preventable death. It's not something that we could not have prevented. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. And then alcohol abuse, we know it's linked to many physical health problems. So alcohol abuse is an issue in and of itself, and you think, alcohol, are we talking about it in church? Yes, I'm going to talk about it in church because it's happening even in church. And then post-traumatic stress disorder, about half of people of rape victims will develop post-traumatic stress disorder, which is like a psychological problem that happens because of the physical violation. And it also happens in 32% who've been physically assaulted. And our sister who just talked right now was talking about not feeling safe, the violence that's around us. So if you get mugged or if you get beaten up, 32% of people who get into those sort of situations will develop post-traumatic stress disorder. It's becoming one of the common mental health problems. And then 14% of those who experience an unexpected or sudden death of a loved one. And obviously, the last 2 years, with COVID, we lost a lot of people suddenly and unexpectedly. And some of us are still reeling from the grief of that and maybe developing some of these problems. And then a little interesting fact there, more people are absent from work due to stress and anxiety than due to actual physical illness. And more days of work are lost due to mental illness rather than chronic diseases like diabetes or asthma or arthritis. And this is a fact. And workplace mental health is a big issue because stress and anxiety and mental health problems are actually affecting the workplace and the bottom dollar for a lot of our workplaces. And it's something that needs to be addressed. What are the common mental health problems? Then back again to our worldview, because we're looking at this situation as Christians, as believers. So mental health problems, if we say mental health is about wellness of the soul, consequently, mental health problems are about sickness in the soul, sickness in our mind, sickness in our will, in our behavior, sickness in our emotions. And yes, the mind can get sick. Our emotions can be, we can have sickness within our emotions. And these are some of the problems that we'll talk about now. I've separated them into common mental health problems and less common, but just as important mental health problems. And you may have heard about all of these, or in some way you've heard about them. But the ones that are on the left are what we call common. This is what we see on a day-to-day basis in the practice of mental health, in the practice of psychiatry. So we see a lot of stress and burnout, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, trauma-related issues, and alcohol and substance use. Those are the common ones. Then there are things that are there. I will mention them so that it's not like I've disregarded them, not at all. Obviously, when you have one of these conditions, it's a big issue because that's affecting your life. But in terms of prevalence, in terms of how many people in a community have it, it's less common. But these are things that happen. We've got our neurodevelopmental problems, things like autism, intellectual disability that can happen to when children are born. And then psychotic problems like schizophrenia, which actually only happens in 1% of the population. It's not very common. Bipolar, a little bit more common, about 3 or 4% of the population, bipolar mood disorder. Then obsessive compulsive disorders, what we call dissociative disorders that are about perception issues, and feeding and eating disorders, your anorexia, your bulimia, sleep problems, sexual disorders, dementia. Some of these are less prevalent. So I'm going to focus more on the common mental health problems today because of time. So I want to talk about all of these issues. I'll just talk about the more common ones. We'll start with stress. So what is stress? Stress is pressure. It's just demand. It's the pressure that life brings, a physiological, psychological, behavioral response to the demand of life. And pressure can be healthy. It motivates us. I needed a little bit of stress to make sure that I was ready for this talk today. But if it's too much stress, and maybe at 8 o'clock I called Lynette and said, I can't do this anymore, then that stress is now making me dysfunctional because I'm no longer able to reach my full potential, to be able to impact you, to be able to make a meaningful contribution. That's when it becomes a problem. And if it's continued chronic stress that's not properly managed, it can become detrimental to our minds and our bodies, actually. Some of the risk factors for unhealthy stress are genetic. We've talked about this already, but also unhelpful personality traits. If you are perfectionistic, if you're overly sacrificial, if you never want to delegate anything, you become stressed. If you've got a very negative outlook, very negative talk, what we call a victim mentality. So when things happen, it's, oh my, woe is me. A learned helplessness, where life has battered you so much that you don't know how to fight anymore. You just feel helpless and you remain helpless as well. Then there are environmental issues. A lot of us learn to be stressed by observing our parents, because our parents were very stressed people, or they would get stressed out a lot by issues. The current home environment. So you're your home now. You're not a child anymore. What is your home environment like now? That can also bring about stress. Work environment and the social support network that you have. If you've got a poor social support network, you're more likely to get stressed. Right. So I will again ask for your contributions here. So this is a stress curve. Back in the 70s, they actually figured this out, that a little bit of stress is not a bad thing. There's actually a zone in which we're all comfortable. We've got a little bit of stress, but we are able to perform, we're able to do our work. But if you overstress me, then I'll become exhausted and I'll have a mental breakdown, right? So there is good stress, where it's not too much, but it can become bad stress if it's too much. So one of the issues that comes up in terms of stress is responsibilities, and a lot of juggling that we do, particularly as women. But looking at this picture, my friend here, is a lot of things to a lot of people. So I want us to reflect, all of us, just think about all the responsibilities that you have in your life right now. How many hats do you wear? I will wear the hat of wife, I'll wear the hat of mother, of facilitator of a workshop, I'll go and lecture. Then maybe I'm the taxi driver when I'm doing the school run. I have to manage the household, and lots of little hats, different hats that I wear, and you interchange them, sometimes seamlessly. But when there are now too many hats, like my lady here, sometimes some of the issues will get dropped. You drop a ball somewhere. So anyone to share, how many hats do you wear? And how do you manage? How do you manage to balance it? Anyone? Yes, please go ahead. Anyone wants to come in and talk about the different hats that they wear? Sorry, that moved. The different hats that we wear, the different responsibilities that we have. Oh, this thing is misbehaving.
Hello?
Please. Yes, please come in.
It's PC again.
Yes, PC, please go ahead, my friend.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Because of course, because I've got a lot of hits right now. I'm trying to feed my baby. I'm trying to listen to this. I'm trying to.
Yes.
I've got a meeting coming up in 1 hour, and people are calling me. They want me to do something there. I'm just giving a good example of hits. Because I'm a lead at church, remember. So It's already a lot as I'm speaking. Things are happening. My daughter, I've got a little daughter. And for me specifically, remember, that's why I'm just gonna say I'm still PC. I've just migrated from South Africa. I'm somewhere. I'm just somewhere. So I'm trying. That's why even the friend of mine had to invite me, because I'm always telling her, I'm updating her on a daily basis what's going on here, to say, you know what, friend, because for her, she's also planning to come where I am. I'm like, you need to think about this and thoroughly before you even try this, because my friend, it's like she knows my life, especially that time when I went through this depression. You remember when I introduced myself? So we talk, like, even before this session. The other time I told my friend that I'm like, you know what? When you say 9:30, please, can you give me what do we call these things?
Grace
the
period.
CAT time, because now you are giving me another hit to calculate now how many hours behind. It's like you are making it difficult. Please, can you just put CAT for me? You understand? So I think I've explained the hates that I have right now, and I can't even go on and finish all of them right now. But because I have to do something right now, I have to feed my daughter. But anyways, those are the hates that I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, PC. I think that's classic. All of us have been there, I'm sure. Any woman, if you've got children, if you've got family, you're always juggling, and it feels like there's not enough hours in the day. And there's just so much to do, and everybody is demanding from you. That's the other issue as well. Anybody else wants to share on this, on the hats that we wear? There are many hats. Anyone?
Oh, I'll go. I'll give it a go. I don't know whether I'm audible.
Thank you.
I'm also wearing many hats. Feeding the baby, busy making breakfast for the family, work, managing the household. It's just a lot. You have kids to look after. Like, it's just a lot. We wear many hats. Yeah.
That's so true. That's so true. And thank God that this is hybrid today, so that you can make breakfast while you're still listening. You're still with us, which we're juggling a lot. Yeah, you're very right. And there's a lot of demand, and that pressure sometimes is too much, and then we become stressed, and it can become a problem. And if we maybe I'll bring this up now, because sometimes we don't even realize that we're stressed. We just think this is life. But there are, symptoms where that stress now is a little bit too much. And that little man there is from one of the WHO books. There's a self-help book. I can share it when we share the material. That talks about managing stress. It was written during COVID time, and you can read it. It's a very simple self-help book to help you manage stress. But one of the things, before you even manage stress, you have to recognize it. And there are symptoms that we feel, physical symptoms, and then there are thoughts that we have, or patterns of thinking. There are behaviors that we have when we're stressed, and then, of course, emotions. Physically, headaches. Many headaches are just stress related. After a long day, that headache you have, that's here. It's not because there's a tumor in your head. It's stress. That's what it is. And we call that psychosomatic pain, where the mind is making the body ill. Back pain, very commonly linked with stress, lower back pain particularly. Acids and gastritis and reflux pain as well can be linked to stress. Irritable bowel syndrome as well. High blood pressure. Many times blood pressure is very difficult to control if someone is stressed, and they'll talk about, yes, drink your medication, but change your lifestyle to manage your blood pressure. Weight gain for some, comfort eating, and then weight gain, or weight loss. You lose your appetite because of the stress and you lose weight. And then thoughts, difficulty concentrating. You'll think you're getting old. You're not getting old. It's because you're not attending. There's too much pressure. There's too many distractions, and you can't concentrate. Therefore, you can't remember things. That can be one of the things. Indecisiveness. When you're stressed, sometimes you can't make up your mind about certain things. Negative self-talk, another one. Escapism, I'll highlight on this one. We get onto Netflix and then we zone out. I have nothing against Netflix. It's a wonderful business model, but it has brought us an access to back in the day you would watch one episode of a series a week for the 12 weeks. That's 3 months. Now you can sit down one night and watch all 12. And many of us, is because we're trying to escape. We're trying to escape the pressure. You say, I want to relax. I just want to escape from our issues. But that's not good. And sometimes it's a sign of stress as well. Behavior, alcohol and substance use. And you'd say, ladies meeting, alcohol use, really? Alcohol and drug use is becoming a problem amongst women as well. Women are particularly prone to prescription drug use. So the painkillers that we use sometimes when you're having period pain, they've got strong medicine in them. And some of us then continue even after the period, we use it because it helps me sleep. I've heard this from, women. They'll say, oh, no, I like my stopping. It helps me sleep. Stopping is not a sleeping medication. It's a pain medication, a very strong one at that. And it should not be used for sleep. If you're having that much trouble sleeping, you need help, and you need to address that issue of insomnia. Then, of course, the feelings that come with the stress, the irritability, the anxiety, the anger, the moodiness that can come when we're stressed. So you can answer that question for yourself. Am I stressed? Then burnout. So if the stress continues for a long time, you can start to burn out. And it's a state of physical and psychological and emotional fatigue. So it's exhaustion in the physical realm and in the emotional realm as well. And it can show itself as easy fatigability. You are irritable. You are got a short temper, or you are emotionally sensitive, and then a change in attitude, or what we call cynicism. So you get a cold, detached attitude to things and to others. So you become decreased. You don't have much motivation, decreased motivation, decreased morale. You get that attitude of, whatever will be, whatever happens, happens. If you start thinking like that, you're becoming cynical. And that's sometimes a sign that you're burning out. And you're now not as connected to whatever you're doing, the work that you're doing, the children that you're taking care of, the church work that you're doing. You're not really connected to it anymore. You're just doing it because you have to. And that's a sign that you might be burning out. Then inefficiency, which comes with poor communication, with increased risk of errors, and something called presentism. So presentism is, I'm here, my body is here, but my mind is not. And it is a problem at work, but it can be a problem in the home. It can be a problem in relationships. Presentism, where my body is present, but my mind, my emotions are not. And it's worse than absentism, because if you're absent, then we know you're not there. Then we can find a replacement. So if you're not there at work, they find a replacement for you. But if you are there but not there, they will not find a replacement for you. That means you can't rest, and the work suffers as well. Anxiety. So anxiety and fear are not necessarily disorders in themselves. Anxiety is actually an apprehension about a future threat. Fear is a response to an immediate threat. So imagine if someone told you right now there's a lion outside your home or outside the church that you're in. The reaction that you get is fear. So there's a real lion outside, you get fear, right? And fear is supposed to be helpful and protective. It triggers the fight-flight response. So there's a lion outside, your body starts getting ready to run or to fight the lion. So, blood is drawn from your stomach and, your gut to your heart, to your muscles, to your brain, and you are getting ready to run or to fight. And that's actually an adaptive thing. It's a good thing if there's a real lion outside. Anxiety now is an apprehension about something that could go wrong. So maybe there's no lion outside, but there are things that are fearful about life. Vague fears. I don't know how I'll get through the month. We are right in the middle of the month right now. I don't know how we're going to get through the month. I don't know how, I'm going to be able to pay these bills. I don't know how this relationship is going to go. My marriage is not in a good space. It's a vague threat. And those threats can actually trigger anxiety now. Because your body will still respond like there's a lion outside, but there's no lion outside. It's these emotional, relational issues that are there that are now triggering an anxiety response. And anxiety disorders are basically when the anxiety, the fear is excessive, it's persistent, and it's out of proportion with the actual level of risk that's there. And in our little friend there is having all the symptoms of anxiety, headaches, palpitations, you might get goosebumps, you might need to go to the toilet, your legs might shake, these are symptoms of a panic attack, if you've ever had a panic attack. And that's acute anxiety. But some of us may not have this acute anxiety, but we have it chronic. It's always there. That's what we call that generalized anxiety. And then there's panic attacks, like our friend there. And then social anxiety. So I would be unable to talk to you today because I would have social anxiety. I would feel very threatened by having to communicate in a public forum. And then phobias. These are very, very specific fears about specific situations. I've got one. I'm terribly afraid of spiders. That's a phobia that I need to get treated at some point in my life. But some of us have got very, very specific fears. It might be fear of heights, might be fear of flying, it might be fear of spiders, fear of dogs, small things, but they can make you paralyzed. I completely become paralyzed. Spider. The bigger the spider, the more paralyzed I get. So that's anxiety disorders. Then depression. By definition, it's a persistent, sad or irritable mood on most days for about 2 weeks, associated with decreased motivation and drive about life, about most activities, and fatigue. That's what depression is. And then you might have trouble sleeping or sleeping too much, changes in appetite, weight issues. You might struggle to concentrate. You might feel helpless, feel hopeless, feel worthless. And then you might have recurrent thoughts of suicide as a solution, of dying as a solution. And a lot of Christians and believers may not articulate it as suicide. They'll have what we call passive suicidal thoughts. So an active suicidal thought is, I want to die and I'm thinking of ways to harm myself. Many believers, because of the Christian beliefs in us and the beliefs that there is life after death, many Christians may not articulate it like that. A lot of my Christian clients will say, oh, I wish God would take me now. I wish I would just sleep and not come back. I wish I would go to a better place. It's still a suicidal thought, by the way. It's just in a different format. It's passive. It's not active. And it needs to be addressed still. And in some settings, physical health problems. So a lot of us, where we come from, it's very difficult to articulate that we're having an emotional problem. It's easier to go to the doctor or to go to your relatives or your family and say, I have back pain or my chest hurts, than it is to say, I am feeling demotivated, I'm feeling discouraged, I'm feeling stressed out, I'm feeling really sad and depressed, I'm feeling anxious. Sometimes it's harder to articulate the emotional issues, and we don't even have the emotional language to talk about it. It's easier to talk about physical health problems. Then postpartum, I need to talk about this one because about 20% of women have problems after they have a baby. And women don't always talk about these issues. So we think when it happens to us, we think it's just happening to us, but it's actually quite common. So a milder form happens to a lot of women about 3 or 4 days after you have a baby. You might find yourself feeling low. Everything is good. You got the baby's healthy, you're back at home, maybe everything is fine, right? But you find yourself feeling low, and that's because of the massive changes in hormones that happens when they remove the placenta. So your estrogen and progesterone levels crash within 3 or 4 days. And also you're not sleeping, you're trying to feed a baby, you're adjusting to life with the new baby at home, you're probably not sleeping very well, and of course the breast engorgement that comes with breastfeeding as well. All of those factors can lead to what we call baby blues, which is a milder form of postpartum depression. So just baby blues. Most of the time, if you have enough support in the home, and that's why it's very important for mothers to have support in the first 4 weeks or so of delivering a baby. You need hands-on support. People will help you cook, will help you clean, help you with other children if you've got them. It's very important that women have that sort of support. I think back in the day, in Africa, where I come from, your first baby, you would actually be sent back to your mom, and she would take care of you. And after 3 months, that's when they would bring you back to your husband. It was a way of mitigating against that. And maybe that's why we would see less of these problems. But now, because of the nuclear nature of life, many times we're alone. It's just us, you and your husband, trying to deal with things, with a new baby. It can be very, very difficult. But you need to create a support system around yourself to prevent some of these challenges. If the baby blues don't go away, they can then become postpartum depression, with the full picture of depression now there. And that needs urgent attention, because mom needs to be well for baby to be well. Children need more than food. So it's not just about mom feeding baby. It's also about mom connecting with the baby, bonding with the baby. So it's very important that these problems are taken care of quickly if a woman is having postpartum depression issues. And then at its worst, you can have issues of postpartum psychosis. So they then have psychotic symptoms. Now they might have a paranoia. They may not want to feed the baby, or they might be afraid someone wants to hurt the baby. Some of you may have seen these issues before. And these are postpartum problems that are treatable. They're actually treatable. And if this, if you or someone that you know has had these issues, please get help. It's very important to get in touch with your healthcare worker. They can make sure that you get appropriate help. Suicide, it would be amiss not to talk about this. Suicide takes a life every 40 seconds, and it's a big problem amongst young people. The risk factors are untreated or poorly treated depression. That's one of the biggest risk factors. If depression is not treated, many times it can lead to suicide. And then difficult losses, traumatic losses, alcohol and substance use, difficult relationships, chronic illnesses, chronic pain, a profound sense of hopelessness, anything that brings about a sense of hopelessness, feeling trapped, feeling unable to see your way out of a situation, being isolated from others. And many times when people have suicidal thoughts, they feel ashamed of the thoughts, and they don't, and they may not want to talk about them, but or they talk about it and then they're stigmatized. I mean, we'll talk a little bit right at the end about how do we respond to people's pain. If someone comes and says, I want to kill myself, many of us will be like, no, don't do that. Don't think like that. You know, might bring out the Bible and we'll start to bash them a little bit about why they shouldn't be thinking like that. But that's how they're feeling. And it's important sometimes that you acknowledge that that's how they're feeling, and then we'll hold their hand and we help them walk out of that dark place that they find themselves in. So a lot of stigma also comes with this. And then, of course, the masks that we wear, the emotional masks, a lack of authenticity, emotional authenticity and vulnerability. You know, our masks can kill us if we're not able to be open at some point. You can end up in this situation of suicide. Alcohol and substance use. Yes, those are the common ones: alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, prescription drugs. Like I said, sleeping tablets for women, particularly prescription drugs and sleeping tablets, are a big problem for women. That's where we see a lot of women get hooked on these issues. But also alcohol is becoming an issue. The signs of addiction, what we call compulsive use. So you can't stop. You want to stop using this substance or this alcohol, but you can't stop. And then continued use despite negative issues that are going on. So now there are now physical health problems due to the drinking or substance use, psychological problems or social problems. You know, your partner is saying, I'm done with you. If you don't stop drinking or you don't stop using this substance, I'm done with you, but you still can't stop. So that continued use is a sign that there's now dependence or addiction. Increased tolerance, so you need more and more and more of it. Many of us don't start by drinking a whole bottle of wine. You start by drinking half a glass, and that's enough. And then after a while, you now increase to a glass, then 2 glasses, 3 glasses, full bottle. So that's how dependence occurs. And then withdrawal symptoms. So if you stop using the substance, you feel unwell, and that's a sure sign that dependence is now there. What is safe drinking? I know we're in church, but I'm going to talk about it because people do have their alcohol, but we need to know what is safe. So there are health limits to alcohol. And the standard drink is about it's half a pint of beer, 250 mils of wine, and 10 mils of spirit. And on any given day, no one should drink more than 3 standard units. And no one, we mean adults. We mean adult men and women who are not pregnant, women who are not pregnant, no more than 3 standard drinks in a day. So that would be your 3 small glasses of wine or your 1.5 pints of beer. And you should not drink more than 14 units in total in a week. And you should not drink every day. You make sure that you've got 2 to 3 alcohol-free days. So there, I've said it. We need to talk about these issues. Trauma. This is psychological distress following a direct or indirect exposure to a stressful life event. And this can involve experiencing the event yourself, witnessing the event happening, or learning that it has happened to someone that you love. And the severe traumatic events usually result in post-traumatic stress disorder, while the less severe events will result in adjustment disorder or acute stress disorder. So things like rape, assault, domestic violence, road traffic accidents, war, natural disasters. You know, there were floods recently. Child physical, sexual abuse, child neglect can also result in trauma-related issues, going to prison, being tortured, being forcefully, having to migrate, not out of your will, or the sudden death of a loved one can result in post-traumatic stress disorder. While the less traumatic events, your relationship issues, financial difficulties, even things that are happy like getting married can actually cause what we call an adjustment disorder, where you're feeling a bit stressed and because of the changes that are happening. Becoming a parent can also bring about an adjustment disorder. Failing an exam or an assessment, death of a close family member if it's not sudden or traumatic, change in environment, starting a new job or stopping a job, all of that can lead to what we call adjustment disorders. Maybe let me stop for a little bit. I know I'm going to go over time a little bit, so I just need to confirm with the team on the ground if I can have maybe 10 minutes to finish off. The Midrand team. Can you hear me?
Yes, I think they're saying we can go ahead.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Okay, great. So that's great. Let me just, about 10 minutes, I think we'll be done. So there's a lot of mystery around how we manage mental health problems, but it's not that mysterious. It's a holistic, multidisciplinary approach. I think in terms of medical disciplines, we are the most holistic of them because we try and encompass the body, the biology, the psychology, the social. We address all the issues. If you're dealing with someone with a mental health problem, you cannot just give them pills. In fact, the pills are the last of the considerations. You need to consider a lot of other issues when you are dealing with someone who may have developed one of these conditions. So psychological management is part of it, support and counseling, and some psychological interventions. Talk therapies are very important. And then there's the medical management, sometimes particularly with moderate to severe depression, moderate to severe anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder. We may need to give some medication, and that's part of the treatment as well. And then social management. Many times the issues are coming because of social problems. So you cannot give someone a pill and then send them back to the same environment that made them ill. So we have to address the environment that also made them ill and make sure that that environment becomes healthier so someone can become well again. Classic example is domestic violence. I've had clients who are depressed because of domestic violence. When we manage this domestic violence situation, you'll find that the depression gets better. So it's very important that we manage the social issues, the relationship issues. They need to be addressed. We need to strengthen. We often strengthen support networks, and that doesn't need to be family. It doesn't need to be your blood family. It's other people in your life who provide support, and it's important. Then integrating. It's very important that we try to integrate mental health into other services. So other medical services, when you go maybe for your antenatal check when you're pregnant, your gynae can then screen for some of these issues, can talk about some of these issues. Your GP, also integrating into those services and also into church structures as well. A lot of churches have got counseling facilities, and it's very important that our church counselors get training in some of these clinical matters as well. Very important because it provides a support system that everyone can access, that is comfortable to access. We are often, as psychiatric services, a last port of call. People, when they have emotional problems, psychological problems, don't run to the psychiatrist. Most people will go to their church, to their pastor. People sometimes go, to traditional, healers. People will go to friends and family, to, other issues before they come to medical services. So it's important that also those facilities, particularly in the church, have got the capacity to screen for some of these issues, to do the counseling, and then to refer on if something is not getting better. We've got the capacity, within our communities to help each other. And if we've got the knowledge and the skill set, we can, and then we know when to refer someone who needs help. And then rehabilitation as well, as we reintegrate into the community. After you've had a severe illness, it's important that the community is supportive, that we don't stigmatize someone. So if you hear maybe Dr. Chido has been unwell, maybe she was suicidal, right? And then I go and get treatment. When I come back into the community, please welcome me. Please make me feel comfortable. Don't ostracize me because of the situation that I've been in, because that fuels the stigma. And these are some of the barriers to why we don't get help, particularly in Africa. One is stigma and fear. We fear what we don't understand. And I hope I have dispelled a lot of myths today. And we will ask questions. If you've got questions, I'll try and address as many as we can. We fear we don't understand. Once we understand something, we're not as fearful of it anymore. And stigma, one of the sure ways to deal with stigma is information. Educate yourself, get informed, then we'll break that issue of stigma about mental health issues. Then poor mental health literacy. We cannot seek for help for something that we do not perceive to be a problem. So we need that literacy. We've got excellent physical health literacy. If I tell you right now that I've got a sore throat and a cough and I can't smell, what condition could that be? I've lost my sense of smell, I've got a sore throat, and I'm coughing. What condition is that? Anyone?
COVID.
Yes, well done. So you've got excellent COVID health literacy because it was drummed into you during COVID time. So we've got lots of really good health literacy. We know how to diagnose COVID. We know how to diagnose, gastroenteritis in our children. If they start vomiting and having diarrhea, gastroenteritis, food poisoning, something, they must have eaten something. We already know. If a child has got a fever and maybe their teeth are coming out, they're teething. We've got that health literacy. We understand health issues quite well. We put together things to quickly and say, this plus this plus this, it must be pneumonia. Let me go and get help. But with mental health, we don't. You can't put it together to say sad mood, lack of motivation, lack of energy, depression. We don't have that, and we need to build it up. We need to build up, and hopefully a session like this one is part of building up that health literacy. We have to educate ourselves. Then poor mental health seeking behavior. Just saying, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Until, someone is gone. And we're like, it didn't seem that bad. And even they didn't think it was that bad. So we need to have better health seeking behavior. If we're not feeling well, you don't have to come to a psychiatrist. Find a counselor. There are lots of counseling psychologists that are available. Find someone to talk to who you can just express those issues to and be able to share the burden. Then, of course, lack of services. This one, because I'm a public mental health person, I always talk about it. The lack of services in Africa. In Africa, we've got less than 1 per 100,000. So for 100,000 people, there's only one mental health worker in Africa, which is compared to 9 globally everywhere and 70 in some high-income countries. I think in South Africa, you're probably better off than 1 because of a more advanced health system. But most of Africa is 1 per 100,000 people, 70 compared to 70, let's say in the UK or in the US. Just to put this in perspective, I am one of 18 psychiatrists in Zimbabwe, just 18 for a population of 15 million. So it's that the lack of services is also an issue, and we really need to be advocating for mental health care for us all. I will close off with the section on maintaining mental well-being, because I think we've talked a lot about disorders, but I want to come back to the issue of health, that this is about well-being and health. If you forget anything else, please remember this picture, because that's what's important about maintaining our mental well-being. I've touched on some of the issues, but I'll re-emphasize it now. For us to be mentally well, we need to be able to understand our emotions and to be able to be honest about them and to be able to share them with a select group of people. So emotional awareness, emotional authenticity, realness, and emotional vulnerability. Very, very important. Many times we become ill because we bottle our emotions. And months or years later, they make you sick. So it's important that we express our emotions in a healthy way with trusted people. It's not everybody who needs to know what's going on in your life, but 2 or 3 people in your life should really know and be able to help you walk through the challenges of life, right? Then managing our self-talk. very important as well. The person you talk to the most is yourself. And many of us can be very negative in our thoughts, in the way we think, in the way we think about ourselves, the way we talk to ourselves. And in Matthew 12, verse 34, it talks about out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. And it's because there's a lot of negativity in us. That's why we struggle to have a positive talk. And sometimes it's not even just internal talk, it's even external. Have you ever been with people that you sit with them and by the time you finish the conversation, you're feeling down and drained because of the negativity? So we need to change what's inside of us. And as believers, we believe that we put the word of God inside of us so that when the pressure comes, it's the word of God that pops out rather than negativity. And it's a fight, it's a mental battle. I think Joyce Meyer talks about the battle of the mind. It's a mental battle that you have to fight those negative thoughts because we're prone to negative thoughts as human beings. And it's something that we need to fight. Then maintaining what we call an internal locus of control. So a lot of us may feel helpless because there are things that are happening around us. The socioeconomic environment, the family is not very supportive. There are issues that are outside of us that are affecting us. And we feel like we have no control. But I can reassure you that there's a lot of things that are within your control. There are many things that are not, but there's a lot that's within your control. And it's important that you, as challenges come in life, there are two buckets you can put them in. The bucket of things that you can change and the bucket of things that you cannot change. The things you cannot change, leave that bucket. You build your resilience and all of that, but don't spend too much energy there because you can't change it. The bucket of things you can change, let's put our energy there and start to change things that are within our power to control. I've put a book there. It's by a psychiatrist. I think he's late now. It's called Viktor Frankl. He survived the Holocaust in Germany many, many years ago, the Jewish Holocaust. And he was a psychiatrist. He was taken into the camps. And one of the quotes that he says, people can take away everything away from you, but what remains within your control is your attitude. As all of these things are happening, that will always be under your control. So that's how we maintain this internal locus of control, that I can change things. I have got a sense of self-determination. Then spiritual health, outside of our belief systems, which we believe in Christ and we believe in the saving grace and power of Christ and the resurrection. We believe that. But additionally to that, we need to believe that we have got a sense of purpose. There's a reason why we are here on earth. They have a positive perspective to life and have a sense of hope. And that's very important. A sense of hope, have a vision for your life. This is a challenge I'll have to all of us. Do you have a vision for your life? To say this is where I'm going, this is what I aspire for. Do you still dream, for yourself and for your family? And in Proverbs 21 verse 18, it says, where there's no vision, the people cast off restraint. That's one of the translations that says the people cast off restraint, or the people perish. You start to just live for now. If you don't have a vision for yourself, if there's no vision which you are casting for yourself and for your future. And it's mentally protective. When you've got a vision, even if troubles come, what you do is you re-strategize because the vision is still there. The problems have come, but I'll re-strategize and see a way to get through this. And then strong relationships. So we are not independent beings. There's been so much focus on becoming independent women. We're not independent. We are interdependent. We're not dependent. We are interdependent. So we are interdependent and we are relational in nature as human beings. That's the best form of relationship. We need others, but we also help others. And it's very important for us to build these relationships. We've become very, very disconnected as human beings, even though our world is now overconnected. Right now, we're doing this. People are in different, settings. We've come together because of technology. If you want to call someone in Australia, you can. On WhatsApp, you can call them. No problem. We're very, very connected digitally. But in terms of real emotional connection, we're becoming less and less connected. In our families, we really know what's going on with each other. Many times we're on our phones and we're not emotionally connected. We're not really present in the moment. Mental flexibility is also important. Problems are going to come, stress is going to come, and we need to be able to problem solve. We need to be able to reset, re-strategize. When you face a problem, reset, re-strategize. Blessed are the flexible, they will not be broken by life. You need to be flexible, and you need to be flexible mentally to be able to deal with the issues of life. Physical self-care is very important, exercise, eating well, but I'll focus on the issue of rest. It's very important to rest. Women, sometimes we struggle with this one. There's the daily rest, which is called sleep. You need to sleep for 7 to 8 hours as an adult person, because you've got a lot of pressure in life. And for you to cope with the pressures of life, you need to sleep. Yes, there are nights where maybe you can't for one reason or another. Find time to catch up during the weekend where you sleep a little bit more. Then there's the weekly rest, or what used to be called the Sabbath, and that's either on a Saturday or Sunday you rest from your work. And then the monthly rest, those of us who maybe work formal jobs, they'll give you 1.8 days a month. It's well calculated, because every month you're supposed to take a little bit of extra time off to rest and recuperate, and even take a retreat, just your own personal retreat as well. Of course, the yearly rest at the end of the year, a week off, 2 weeks off, so that you rest, you recuperate, you re-strategize. It's very important for mental well-being. Then finally, balance. We are human beings, not human doings. We need to be able to balance doing and all the busy things we do, and just being present in the moment. Right now, during this workshop, have you been present with us? Or are you finished cooking lunch and you're already planning for Monday in your mind? It's very stressful when you can't get your mind to focus on the here and now, and you're always thinking about the future or thinking about the past. It's very important to figure out what the agenda of the day is. What is God's agenda for today? Many of us are stressed because we're busy doing so many things, and some of it is not even in God's agenda for us for that day. It's just stuff we're putting in. I'll give the example of in Luke 10 in verse 41, Martha and Mary. So Jesus comes to visit Mary and Lazarus, and they're hosting him for dinner. And Jesus comes, and Mary picks up God's agenda for the day, and she sits down and starts listening to what the Messiah had to say. Martha, on the other hand, is busy. Many of us are like that, me included, very busy making sure that the food is there, the pots are cooking. And then she complains, why don't you tell this sister of mine to come and help me? But it's because Martha had misinterpreted the situation. She had missed God's agenda. So a challenge to you: what's God's agenda for your life? What's God's agenda for your week? What's God's agenda for your day? And focus on that. You won't be stressed, because God will not put more on us than we can bear. He gives us the burdens that we're able to carry, or that He has given us the grace to carry. So Martha, you're upset about so many things, but few things are needed, and Mary had chosen what was needed. Finally, safeguarding each other's mental well-being. If we're really going to make impact in each other's lives, it's important that we watch out for each other. How do we respond to other people's pain? There's a story, I don't have time now to go through. I normally like to read the whole story in 1 Kings 19. And it's the story of Elijah. Elijah had killed the prophets of Baal. It had a very great victory. There were the prophets of Baal and Jezebel. They were, really defiling the land. And Elijah comes in, and there's a standoff, and he says, you know what? Let's stand off. You say that Baal is God, or these gods of yours are powerful, and I say that there's only one true God. And we're going to see the one who answers by fire. He is God. And they had this standoff. And the prophets of Baal, they did their thing. They were trying to get Baal to answer and light the sacrifice. And then, of course, they failed. And then Elijah prayed to God at the time of sacrifice, and his God responded by fire, and he lit up the sacrifice by himself, even though it was actually drenched in water. So it was a great sacrifice. And then Elijah turned on the prophets of Baal, and he killed them. He actually killed them. Violent situation. But he had this victory. But soon after, Jezebel then says, she hears about it and says, I'm going to kill you. And a crisis ensues in Elijah, an emotional crisis. And if you read in the actual, let me just open it, because I feel it's really important for us to realize that these issues, they're not far off. And when we as believers also should know that these things happen. If it could happen to a man of the stature of Elijah, it can happen to me, it can happen to you. And, so I've said, Jezebel says, I'm going to kill you. And then Elijah then ran for his life. And he went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down by a broom tree. And he said, it is enough now, Lord. Take my life, for I'm no better than my father's. If that isn't a suicidal thought, that is a suicidal thought, if you ask me. And then he lays down under a broom tree, and then the angel of the Lord came and touched him and says, arise and eat. So God responded to the suffering of Elijah. This was a strong man. He had just killed, we don't know how many, but quite a number of the prophets of Baal. He was a strong man, but he was broken in this moment. And God responded. He could have responded in a very tough manner. Elijah, get your act together. You are the prophet of God. Please get your act together. Let's move on. There's work to do. But that's not what God did. God responded with kindness, with support. For 3 times, he asked him, the angel was sent with food, and Elijah was given a piece of bread and some water to drink. And then God said, let me actually read it. It says, arise and eat. And he looked, and there was by his head a cake of baked on coals, a jar of water, and he ate and he drank and he lay down again. So he slept again. And the angel came back a second time and said, arise and eat, because the journey has become too great for you. Is that how we respond to each other when someone comes in crisis, when someone is overwhelmed? Our homes that welcoming, that someone can just come and rest. You just tell them, come to my house, you sleep by the sofa there, rest. Allow them to rest and give them something to eat. It's very, very important that we are kind, we are supportive when someone is in crisis. And then later the confrontation comes, but it's confrontation in love. So eventually, after he had been woken up 3 days, he then walked for 14 days and 40 nights to the mountain of God, Horeb. And that's where God confronted him, and he asked him, Elijah, what are you doing here? It wasn't, what are you doing here at Horeb? It was, what are you doing here? How did you get here emotionally, psychologically? How did we get here? And God started to confront him, and God revealed himself to Elijah, and basically helped Elijah get through the crisis that he was in. So a few things about this story is, yes, depression happens, suicidal thoughts happen, even Elijah had them, and it's important to be authentic. He was very authentic. He prayed to God and asked to die. How many of us are that real in our prayers? How many of us allow other people to be that real in their prayers? Yeah, it's important. And then God's response of kindness, compassion, support, reassurance, and then confrontation in love, to say, okay, we're feeling better now, you've rested. Now we need to face this issue. We need to face this issue and restructure and deal with the challenge that's there. And that's what then happened. What's your response to someone's emotional pain? It's important that we give each other the gift of time. I'll end on this one. Many times we ask someone, how are you? We don't really want them to answer, because if they answer honestly, it will take us time to deal with the issues. We just want them to say, I'm fine. That's the answer that we usually prefer. But you really want, if you really want someone to open up and share, then it's important that you give them the precious gift of your time. Don't be judgmental, be supportive, be kind. And if there is need for confrontation, it needs to be done in love. So that's the end of my talk. These are resources that can be made available to you. They're free little booklets that I've done with different organizations, one on grief, one on mental health self-care, mental health the workplace, depression in African women, and dealing with stress in uncertain times. Currently working on this one, on men's mental health, and that can be made available as well once it's ready. So that's me. These are my contact details if you need help. But I encourage you, wherever you might be, just go to your nearest healthcare worker. If you feel some of these things that we talked about today are an issue, they'll make sure that you get to where you can get assistance. Otherwise, I will hand over back to our host. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Keep in touch. We got the contacts. Thank you. I was waiting for the contacts. It's PC again.
Thank you, PC.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. I think our team on the ground,
Thank you.
they can hear you, but they can't just speak back. So I don't know if there's anyone who has questions before we let her go, and then you can just quickly ask questions before we close in prayer. Any questions? Going once, twice. I think she has covered everything. I don't think anyone has questions.
Right. If there aren't any questions, I can hand over back to the hosts to close. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you for prioritizing mental health as well. It's very critical that we talk about these issues.
Sorry,
I
hello?
think.
Oh, sorry. Lynette Masango was just calling me on the phone. She was asking if you can turn on your phone so that they can ask some questions that they have on the ground. I see some are still coming in on the chat. I see one question saying, what is available for men regarding mental health?
I think with men, there's a lot of right. There's a lot of I think part of it is just let me answer her. Hello? Okay. Uh-oh. Hi. Okay. Right. So I've got the yes, I can hear you. Just a minute. I was just answering one of the questions in the chat box about men's mental health. So the reason I actually brought it up is because we need to raise awareness. A lot of men are struggling. Men's mental health issues often look different to women's. I didn't go into a lot of detail about it because I mean it's our meeting today. But with the men, they present differently. So depression might look like aggression. It might look like overworking. It might look like emotional detachment. And that doesn't look like your typical depression. So they often get misdiagnosed, and that then delays treatment. So there's it's something that I can share with the men if they're that interested. We can have a workshop there. I've been called to quite a few now, men's mental health workshops, particularly in November, during November, when they do men's health month. There is now a bit more awareness about it, but it's something we need to raise awareness about in our families. And it's important the way we raise our sons, the way we discuss mental health issues amongst our with our brothers, our fathers, our spouses. Very important that we actually raise these issues. But yeah, there is material that is available. So I've got you on your phone. You can tell. Are there any questions on the ground?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, my name is Maipilo. I'm here on the ground. One thing that I think we did not touch on is social media. Mm-hmm. It brings about so much anxiety. Mm-hmm. Just scrolling, I used to experience it myself. Mm-hmm. Where when I stay there longer than I should. When I put my phone down, I feel some anxiety, being overwhelmed. I think there's so much content there for one to consume in a space of an hour. Others even stay longer. So, for myself, I've had to control or manage to a point where I stopped going on Facebook, Instagram as well. There was a time it was daunting for me, so I had to just stop going on there just for my well-being. So that's a very important one. I think even the younger kids they are consumed by it. You see them also when they were family. You did touch on that. That there isn't interaction anymore. So it's a very big one.
Thank you very much. Thank you for bringing it up, because it is one of the factors that's affecting our mental health. And it's incidentally, I've written an article. I write newspaper articles every week on mental health. I'll share the one that's actually coming out on Monday on social media and mental health. But you've actually brought it up now. So one of the issues is social media causes distraction. It causes distraction from work. It causes distraction from life. We are constantly checking our phones, and like you said, there's an overwhelming amount of information, and it's new information all the time. So there's that fear of missing out. Of, okay, let me just keep scrolling because there might be something that I might miss, and it actually creates a dependence, because an addiction. Because it's so new, it triggers our reward system the same way drugs of abuse do. And that novel nature of the information, we become addicted to, just getting more and more information, and that fear of missing out. But one of the challenges that's now coming is also reduced attention span, because some of these applications like TikTok videos, it's like 30 seconds or less. And we just don't concentrate anymore because of the nature of social media. I think there's been studies that have shown that the human concentration span now globally is around 12 seconds. If you 12 seconds, the attention is gone, and we're already checking our phone. And you can actually put an app on your phone to check how many times you check it during the day. It's shocking. The phone hasn't rang, it hasn't alerted you that there's a message, but you just check it. And that's an issue. It affects our sleep. Many of us, we sleep with our phones by the side of our heads, and that actually affects our sleep. It's the first thing that we interact with when we wake up. It's the last thing that we interact with when we go to sleep. It can affect our self-esteem. We all post the best of our lives. I'll post my photoshopped family picture where we just look perfect. I'll post the best of my children's pictures. No one will post when I'm yelling at my kids because we are late to school, there's been a problem, or we're having disagreements with my husband. We're not going to post the bad side of life. So it's an unbalanced picture, and it can put pressure on us. When you go on social media and you see, hey, this woman, she's got herself sorted. Yeah, she's also got issues. It's just that people don't post that on Facebook. So it's always important to stay balanced. Yeah, and I think it's important to get offline, sometimes. Give yourself a holiday, like you said, getting off Facebook for some time. It's often, give yourself a vacation to just say, the next week I'm not on Facebook, or for the next 2 weeks I'm just resting. Reduce the time online. It's a useful tool. Some of us, our businesses run on some of these social media platforms, but we should balance it out with time offline. We should be able to switch off our phones at a certain hour of the day. The phone doesn't have to have data on during the night. It's a tool for people to communicate with us if we need them to. So you leave the phone on for emergencies, but switch the data off so that all of those notifications stop. Or delete some of the social media platforms on the phone, put them on your laptop or desktop, so that way it limits the interaction as well. But very important that we don't just live on the virtual platform. We also need to live in real life. But thank you for that. Thank you.
I think this side, everyone is covered.
Okay. Nagisai, did you want to say something?
Oh, no. I was just checking if we have any more questions. I think they just confirmed that there's no more questions.
Okay, fantastic.
So I would like to really thank you so much. You have opened up our minds regarding this mental issue that we don't know so much about. As you said, that it's something that we need to build up and diagnose very well. So I think it has opened so much for us to learn more about this issue and how to address this issue even in future. So thank you so much on behalf of the ladies. And then I would like to ask Ma'am Shikane if she can close for us in prayer. Is Ma'am Chikane available?
Yes.
Oh, all right.
Father, we would like to thank you for this service, a very important one for our minds and our spiritual being and our physical being. We thank you, Lord, for your daughter, for what she has shared to us. And we would like to thank you for all who participated. May what we have learned and heard be of help to our mental, spiritual, and physical being. And may you bless all those who have organized this session for all of us. May it also benefit not only us, our families, and that we should be able to share with the many. We would like to pray for those, Lord, who are struggling with mental health. May your peace that passes all understanding engulf them through our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Thank you, Lord. Amen.